Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're taking on something that sounds straight out of science fiction, neuroevolution. Now imagine if instead of all that complex math we usually hear about with AI training, what if we could just breed smarter and smarter networks over generations? Kind of like, evolution in nature. That's the wild concept we're going to be unpacking today.
And it's not just a cool concept either. You've shared a really insightful research excerpt with me from Nature, no less, Designing Neural Networks Through Neuroevolution, published in 2019. So he's got a strong foundation here to really explore how this whole thing works. And more importantly, I think, what it could mean for the future of AI as we know it.
Okay, so I think before we get ahead of ourselves, let's make sure everyone listening is on the same page. We're always hearing about deep learning, right? Algorithms crunching tons of data, figuring things out. Where does this neuroevolution thing even fit in?
It's a different approach, definitely. Traditional deep learning that uses something called backpropagation. Basically, it's a way to fine-tune a network, analyze its errors, and then adjust all those connections inside to get it closer to the right answer. Very mathematical, very precise.
But neuroevolution, this is more like throw a bunch of networks at the problem and see what sticks.
Well, yeah. In a simplified way, that's it. You're using these things called evolutionary algorithms, like simulating survival of the fittest, but for these networks. So the ones that do well, they get to, reproduce, pass on whatever worked for them. The ones that don't, they just kind of fade away, like in nature.
So instead of fine-tuning one network, you've got this whole population competing, evolving over time. That's pretty wild when you think about it. And the Nature article, it hinted that this lets neuroevolution tackle some things that regular deep learning has trouble with, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about the structure of a neural network itself, how it's all wired up. And even those critical settings, sometimes called hyperparameters, that determine how well it learns. Backpropagation, usually that stuff's fixed.
But with neuroevolution, even those things can evolve. Now, that's a game changer. Gotta admit, when I first heard about neuroevolution, I thought it was, I don't know, kind of niche, some cool experiments, but not really at the forefront of everything happening in AI.
There's some history there for sure. Early on, even with limited computing power, neuroevolution did some impressive stuff. You wouldn't believe it. It was even used to help discover the mass of the top quark, that fundamental particle at the tevatron.
Wait, seriously, that's amazing. So we're not just talking about robots learning to walk here. This has had real-world impact. But what happened when the whole deep learning revolution took off? Did neuroevolution just get left behind?
Now that's where things get really interesting. Deep learning, its big breakthrough was scaling up, right? Bigger networks, more data, all thanks to powerful GPUs. You might think, well, evolution, that's a slow process. How can it keep up? But what researchers are finding is that neuroevolution, it scales incredibly well too.
So as we get more computing power, neuroevolution doesn't just trudge along, it actually gets even more powerful. That's kind of the opposite of what I'd expect. So I'm guessing this led to some pretty exciting new stuff.
Oh, it did. They started applying neuroevolution to these deep neural networks, the same kind that power a lot of modern AI. And what they found is it can handle these really complex problems, like reinforcement learning, where an AI agent is learning by interacting with its environment.
Like those AI agents that can play video games better than humans.
Exactly. And sometimes, get this, neuroevolution actually outperformed the classic deep learning methods on those tasks, which is surprising to a lot of people, because they thought evolutionary algorithms were just too slow for that level of complexity.
So what's the secret sauce here? What's giving neuroevolution this edge all of a sudden?
Well, one key advantage is the focus on novelty and diversity. Think about evolution in nature. It's all about generating this vast array of solutions, right? From tiny bacteria to giant whales. That diversity is crucial for finding those really innovative solutions, the ones that work best.
It's like if you're only looking under one rock, you're going to miss all the cool stuff hiding everywhere else, right?
Precisely. Now, traditional neuroevolution, it often focused on diversity in the genes of a neural network, the parameters, all the little numbers that make it up. But researchers realized you can have a lot of genetic variation and still end up with networks that act pretty much the same.
Like breeding a bunch of dogs that look different but still, well, act like dogs.
A perfect analogy. To get those real breakthroughs, you need behavioral diversity. Networks that actually do things differently, explore the problem in unique ways.
So how do we get these networks to, break out of the mold, to really innovate?
Well, neuroevolution has some fascinating techniques for that. Two of the most intriguing are novelty search and quality diversity.
Okay, this sounds interesting. Novelty search, though, that almost sounds like a contradiction. Don't we want our AI to be good at something, not just, well, novel?
That's the surprising part. With novelty search, you actually reward networks just for being different. It doesn't even matter if they're good at the task, as long as they're doing something unique, something we haven't seen before.
It's like saying, forget winning the game, just show me something completely new. I'm guessing this leads to some pretty unpredictable results.
It does. Imagine those nature documentaries where you see some bizarre creature doing something you never expected. Novelty search, it encourages that kind of exploration in AI. It pushes it to come up with solutions that no one would have thought of. And sometimes those unexpected solutions turn out to be incredibly effective.
Nature's own brainstorming session, just constantly trying new things, and every now and then, those wild experiments, they turn out to be the key to survival. But what about quality diversity? That sounds a bit more, well, focused on results.
It is. Quality diversity algorithms, like one called MAP Elites, they aim to create a whole repertoire of solutions, not just one best network, but a bunch that are diverse in their behavior and high performing.
So it's like building a team of specialists. Each one is the best at a particular variation of the task, and having that range of skills, that makes the whole system more adaptable.
Exactly. Just like in nature, you've got different species filling different niches. This diversity makes the system more robust, able to handle all kinds of challenges. Now, all of this raises a fascinating question for me. We keep talking about these complex networks, but how does nature pack all the information to build something as intricate as a brain into something as tiny as DNA?
Right. It's mind-boggling how something so small can hold the blueprint for so much complexity.
And that leads us to the concept of indirect encoding in neuroevolution.
So it's like nature found this way to compress the blueprint for a brain into this tiny code. Are researchers trying to do the same thing with neural networks?
They are. Instead of evolving the entire network directly, they're exploring ways to evolve these compact sets of rules that can generate those complex network structures, just like DNA does for biological organisms. It's a way to get a lot of complexity from a relatively small amount of information.
So instead of evolving the whole building, we're evolving the blueprint. That's pretty clever. I'm guessing this leads to some pretty innovative network designs.
It does. One of the most captivating examples of this is something called CPPNs, compositional pattern producing networks. They sound complicated, but the idea is actually really elegant. Imagine a neural network, but instead of processing data, it outputs patterns.
Patterns, like visual patterns.
Like that, but they can also represent the connections and weights of another neural network. It's like having a network that designs other networks.
Hold on, AI designing AI. Things are getting pretty meta here.
It is getting pretty meta. There's even this cool online platform called PicBreeder, where you can see CPPNs in action. You can breed images, starting with simple shapes and evolving them into complex, sometimes beautiful patterns.
Okay, I'm definitely checking that out later. But how do these CPPNs actually design neural networks? It still sounds a bit mysterious.
They do it through a technique called hyperneate, where the CPPN is used to generate the weights of a neural network based on its geometry.
Geometry, like its shape and the positions of its neurons.
Exactly. So let's say you have a network that processes visual information. The CPPN can create this pattern of weights that corresponds to the spatial arrangement of those input neurons.
So neurons that are close to each other in the image might end up with similar weights, kind of like how our brains process visual information, right? That's amazing.
It is. And get this. HyperNeat can even generate convolutional patterns on its own.
Wait, convolution, isn't that like a core concept in deep learning, especially for image recognition?
It is. And the fact that neuroevolution, through these indirect encoding techniques, can rediscover this principle, it's a pretty strong indication that it's tapping into something fundamental about how intelligence works.
This is blowing my mind. So by evolving these CPPNs, we're not just tweaking existing network designs, we're potentially discovering entirely new, more powerful ways to structure neural networks, things we might never have thought of ourselves.
That's exactly the exciting part. We're not limited by our human biases and limitations anymore. Neuroevolution can explore this vastly wider range of possibilities.
Wow, this is why I love these deep dives. It's like getting a glimpse into the future of AI. Okay, I'm ready to dive deeper into what neuroevolution can really do. What else does it have up its sleeve?
Well, now we're venturing into something called meta-learning.
Mhm.
The idea of, learning how to learn.
Of meta learning. Okay, I feel like that's one of those buzzwords I keep hearing more and more these days. What's the big deal with it? And how does it connect to everything we've been talking about with neuroevolution?
It's a big deal because it gets to the heart of what makes intelligence truly adaptable. I mean,
Sure.
think about it. We humans, we don't need to be explicitly programmed for every new situation, right? We learn, we adapt, we build on what we already know. Meta-learning aims to give AI that same ability.
So instead of training a network to do just one specific thing, we're training it to become a better learner, period.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that neuroevolution, in a way, it's been doing meta-learning all along. Evolution itself, over millions of years, has produced organisms that are incredibly good at learning.
That's a really interesting point. I mean, humans, we're the ultimate learning machines, and we're a product of evolution. So you're saying that by using neuroevolution, we're tacking into that same ancient process to create AI that can learn more like we do.
You got it. It's almost like this nested loop of learning. The outer loop is evolution, generating all these different species of neural networks. And then the inner loop is each of those networks learning and adapting to its environment, just like an individual organism.
So instead of having to program every little detail of how an AI should learn, we're letting evolution discover those strategies for us.
That's the idea. And researchers are using neuroevolution to explore some really fascinating mechanisms within this, like evolving something called synaptic plasticity.
Synaptic plasticity. Okay, that one sounds a bit technical. Break that down for us.
Sure, it's actually a pretty fundamental concept in neuroscience. It refers to the way the connections between neurons in our brains change over time based on our experiences. Those connections, they can get stronger or weaker depending on how much we use them. And that's how learning happens at the biological level.
So those connections are constantly adapting, rewiring themselves as we learn new things. And are you saying researchers are now evolving neural networks that can do the same thing?
Exactly. Instead of just fixing the connections in a network, they're allowing them to change and adapt during the learning process, just like in a real brain.
Mhm.
And this leads to some pretty amazing capabilities.
Like what? What can these networks with, what was it called, evolved synaptic plasticity actually do?
Well, for one, they're much more adaptable. They can learn new things without forgetting old ones as easily, which is a major challenge in traditional AI.
Ah, you're talking about that catastrophic forgetting problem,
Right.
where the AI learns something new and completely wipes its memory of everything it knew before.
That's the one. It's a big obstacle to creating truly intelligent AI. Because in the real world, we're constantly learning new things and building on our existing knowledge, right?
Mhm.
Evolving synaptic plasticity is one way to address that.
So it's like giving these networks the ability to learn and grow throughout their lifetime, more like we do.
That's a great way to put it. And it gets even cooler. Researchers are also exploring the evolution of something called neuromodulation.
Okay, neuromodulation. Now we're really getting into the brain science. What's that all about?
Neuromodulation is kind of like having a control system for synaptic plasticity. So instead of just letting the connections between neurons change randomly, the network can actually control which connections get stronger or weaker.
So it's like having this little manager inside the network saying, hey, these connections are important, let's boost them up, and those over there, we don't need them anymore, let them fade away.
A perfect analogy.
Right.
And this ability to selectively control plasticity is incredibly powerful. It's like having these different compartments in the brain for different skills. So you don't overwrite one when you learn another.
That makes a lot of sense. And could this be the key to solving that catastrophic forgetting problem we were talking about?
It very well could be. By evolving these neuromodulatory mechanisms, we can potentially create networks that can learn new things without completely forgetting old ones. It's still early days, but there have been some promising results.
This is really fascinating stuff. It's amazing to see how these ideas from neuroscience are being applied to create more adaptable, more intelligent AI. Now, we've talked a lot about evolving the way these networks learn, but what about evolving the networks themselves? I mean, the actual structure of the network, how all the neurons are connected, can that evolve too?
That's another incredibly exciting area of research called architecture search. And yes, it's all about finding the best way to connect those neurons for a given task, like designing the blueprints for the AI brain.
And that's important, right? Because the way a network is structured, that has a huge impact on how well it performs.
Absolutely. It's like designing a building. The layout, the way the rooms are connected, that determines how well the building functions. Now, in the past, designing those network architectures, it was mostly done by hand. Human experts painstakingly crafting them, based on their knowledge and intuition.
But that sounds incredibly time-consuming and maybe even limiting, right? Our human brains can only handle so much complexity.
Exactly. And that's where neuroevolution comes in. By using evolutionary algorithms, we can automate this process and explore a much wider range of architectures than any human could possibly design by hand.
So instead of us designing the AI brains, we're letting the AI design itself.
In a way, yes. And this approach has already led to some remarkable breakthroughs, especially in deep learning. Researchers have used neuroevolution to evolve architectures that achieve state-of-the-art results on image classification benchmarks, for example, even outperforming human-designed architectures in some cases.
Wow, so we're talking about AI that can not only learn but also design itself. That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is, and it raises some really profound questions about the future of AI and the role of human designers. Are we moving towards a future where AI systems can design and optimize themselves, leading to this explosion of AI capabilities?
That's a really intriguing question. But with all this talk about neuroevolution and its potential, does that mean deep learning is becoming obsolete? Are these two approaches completely separate?
Not at all. In fact, one of the most exciting trends in the field is the convergence between neuroevolution and deep learning.
So it's not an either-or situation. It's more like they're complementing each other.
Exactly. Researchers are realizing that these two approaches have a lot to offer each other. They're developing these hybrid approaches that combine the strengths of both methods.
Like what? Can you give us some examples of how they're being combined?
Sure. One really interesting example is using evolutionary algorithms to evolve the hyperparameters for gradient descent, which is, the core algorithm in deep learning.
So instead of us having to manually tweak those settings, we're letting the AI figure out the best configurations for us.
Precisely. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of deep learning. And they're also using evolutionary algorithms to design new types of loss functions, which are basically the measures of how wrong a network is during training. By designing better loss functions, we can guide the learning process more effectively.
So it's like giving the AI a better compass to navigate that complex world of data and learning.
That's a great analogy. And they're even translating concepts from neuroevolution, like synaptic plasticity,
Right.
or in those CPPNs we talked about earlier, into forms that can be used within deep learning frameworks. It's like taking the insights from neuroevolution and integrating them into the deep learning toolbox.
This is amazing. It sounds like we're witnessing this really exciting fusion of ideas, a kind of cross-pollination between these two powerful approaches to AI. This deep dive has already taken us on such a fascinating journey. We've gone from the biological inspiration of the brain to these incredibly sophisticated algorithms that are pushing the boundaries of what AI can do. And now we're seeing how neuroevolution is not only a powerful approach in its own right, but also a source of inspiration for improving deep learning itself.
It's a really dynamic field.
Right.
And it's moving incredibly fast. What we know today might be completely different tomorrow. And that's what makes it so exciting to be a part of.
I completely agree. It feels like we're on the cusp of something truly revolutionary. Okay, I'm ready for the final stretch of this deep dive. What are the biggest challenges ahead for neuroevolution, and where do you see this field heading in the future?
Well, one of the biggest challenges, especially as we aim for AI that approaches, the complexity of the brain, it's scalability. Neuroevolution does benefit from more computing power, that's for sure. But training these really sophisticated models, it still demands a ton of resources.
It's like we need a supercomputer just to simulate a tiny fraction of what our brains can do, and we're not even close to that yet, are we?
Not quite. So a lot of the research is focused on making those neuroevolution algorithms more efficient. They're exploring things like parallel processing, where you have multiple computers working together on the problem, and even distributed computing, where the workload is spread across a vast network of machines.
And that's where that collaboration between neuroevolution and deep learning becomes even more crucial, right? Using the insights from one to make the other even more powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. By incorporating those smart ideas from neuroevolution, like evolving architectures, adapting learning strategies on the fly, we might be able to create deep learning algorithms that are far more efficient, capable of handling even more complex problems than we can even imagine right now.
It's like taking the best of both worlds, the elegance of evolution, this natural process that's been working for billions of years, combined with the raw power of modern computing.
Now, taking a step back from all the technical stuff for a moment, what really fascinates me about neuroevolution is its potential to, unlock a deeper understanding of intelligence itself.
That's definitely one of the most exciting aspects of this whole field, I agree. It's not just about building better AI, it's about understanding those fundamental principles. learning, adaptation, maybe even creativity.
We talked about open-endedness earlier.
Yeah.
Is that one of the areas where neuroevolution is pushing those boundaries in terms of understanding? It definitely is. Open-endedness in AI, it's about creating algorithms that can continue to learn and evolve indefinitely, constantly discovering new, more complex solutions.
It's almost like mimicking that incredible open-ended process of evolution that's been happening on Earth forever, right? Always coming up with these new, surprising forms of life.
That's the inspiration. And if we can crack the code of open-endedness in AI, who knows what we might create? AI systems that don't just solve problems, but invent entirely new things, just like nature has been doing for billions of years.
It's like we're not just building tools, we're creating partners in discovery and innovation.
And that raises a lot of really interesting questions, not just about the technical challenges, but the ethical considerations too. What does it mean to create AI systems that can potentially surpass our own abilities in certain areas?
We're getting into some deep philosophical waters here, but it's a conversation we need to have for sure. The future of AI, it's intertwined with the future of humanity, and it's important to consider all the implications, both good and bad.
Well said. And as we wrap up our deep dive into neuroevolution, I think the most important takeaway is this. It's a field that's constantly evolving, pun intended.
I like that. What we know today might be completely different tomorrow. That's both exciting and maybe a little bit daunting.
Exactly. It's an invitation to stay curious, to keep learning, exploring, and to never stop asking those questions. Who knows? Maybe you, listening right now, will be the one to make the next big breakthrough in this field.
That's an inspiring note to end on. And that wraps up our deep dive into the fascinating world of neuroevolution. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the biological inspiration to all the technical details, from the impressive successes to the challenges that still lie ahead.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you.
The pleasure was all ours, really. And if you're feeling inspired to learn more, we highly recommend checking out that research article we discussed today, Designing Neural Networks Through Neuroevolution. You can find the link to it in the show notes, as always. So until next time, keep diving deep and keep exploring the incredible world of AI. Who knows what amazing discoveries await us just around the corner?